Hey, so we're here with Coach LeBlanc. Coach, how you doing today?
Hey, Christian, I'm doing well. Thanks so much for having me on.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So when did you realize coaching was something you wanted to do for the rest of your life?
So it's so funny because, and I've told this story before. When I was a senior at Bucknell, it seemed like all the students, they're not just student athletes, but regular student body, everybody started to have their jobs lined up like in the fall of our senior year, certainly heading into second semester. So I got on that track as well and interviewed in the first semester, and I was already planned, to work for Prudential Financial. And in the spring, my coach at the time started, talking about how our graduate assistant was graduating and she's going
Mhm.
to need a new GA. It just like, sort of in jest was like, Mo, you'd be an awesome GA. You should stay and be a GA. And I was like it just, I felt that fire immediately, like that excitement. But I also knew that that wouldn't be a great idea. And she knew that as well. It's hard. It's really hard. And some people have done it flawlessly, but to transition from a player to a coach in the very next year. So anyways, I went off and started working at Prudential Financial as was planned. And I always passed this high school on my way to work every day. And one day I got out of work early and I just pulled into the high school and was like, I'm going in and I'm going to ask if I can help out. I just want to be around the game. Maybe they'll let me come volunteer, help out with some workouts. And the athletic director was there and he was like, we're actually looking for a JV coach. Do you want it? And I'm like, yeah. I mean, so I think sometimes like that's one of those right place, right time moments for me. We just had a quick on the spot interview, if you'll even call it that, a conversation. But he hired me and I immediately got connected with the varsity coach, who was also a football and a track coach at the high school and just a great guy. And that really was my start in coaching. And I loved it. I couldn't wait to go to my JV basketball practice every day. And, that really just said something to me at that point in time of like, you love this. Like, this is your non-paying job. Like, you love this. Let's see if I can make this my job. Like, if I can get to do this every day.
Yeah, so I'm a Jersey guy, and if I remember correctly, the school was Hanover Park.
Hanover Park High School. Yes.
Yes, yes, yes. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I've coached high school too as well. Definitely different than the collegiate level.
Sure.
Um, I've coached JV, I've coached varsity, I've done all that. Um, about that time, rehashing this a little bit. You said it was a really pivotal moment for you, but what did you learn during that time in regards to the X's and O's? Just because you're kind of at that time, you're kind of throwing spaghetti against the wall and seeing what sticks and stuff
Oh,
like that, which I think is awesome. But
yep.
looking back at it, um, you know, what thing did you really like learn the most? Or what would you tell your younger self when you first started there?
Well, I think at that point in time, I relied heavily on my own experiences. And so I think that for all people that are just getting into coaching, and I hate to say nowadays because it makes it seem like that was a long time ago, but it was. Um, there's so much access now to watching coaching videos. You don't just have to be at a clinic live to learn new things. There's podcasts like yours. There's so many ways to learn all the time. I was walking my dogs this morning and listening to a pod, and I do that often, whether I'm driving or walking. And there's just so many ways to learn the game. And when I first started coaching, I relied so heavily on my own experiences. So I didn't know that much. And I think like that became clear because as a JV coach, um, every day at practice, I had the great fortune of practice by and large being led by our varsity coach. But on game day, I was coaching the team, myself. And I learned quickly, like, I don't know that much, and that was awesome. It was exciting to know that there's so much more to get better at. But I think even as a young like assistant at the college level, which was my next spot, like coaching is coaching. So I think just it was humbling to just know how much I didn't know, and now I'm a head coach and I still don't know a lot. But that's part of the fun, and that's what makes it so exciting, is that growth that can happen in your own philosophies. And really, that's what we're always trying to do, is just like maximize our own potential, maximize the abilities of our players. And so you can't really do that if you're not learning constantly. So I learned at that point in time that I learned that it was so important to keep learning.
Yeah, definitely. You have to always explore and look to learn new things. I think the people that stick around are really the basketball nerds that are always just exploring and trying to see new ways to implement things within their team, because teams constantly evolve, so you have to evolve,
Right.
So,
Yeah, I used to think that I was actually talking about this with one of my assistants the other day. The younger me always felt like maybe it was something to overcompensate for being a younger or less experienced coach. I used to feel like I had to have answers, and I used to feel like I had to come across as knowing the right thing to do in situations. And as years go by, you just get so much more comfortable saying like, huh, I hadn't really thought of it like that, but that's not a bad idea. Let me think on that. Or yeah, I'm not quite sure what I would do right there. I think this is what I would do. And like that it's okay to not necessarily know everything, because we don't know everything.
mhm. So you're a native of Rhode Island.
Yeah.
All right. So if you were to use one word to describe a basketball player from Rhode Island, what would it be and why?
It's funny because I actually went to high school right across the border in Massachusetts, in the town of Attleboro. Um, but I played AAU with a Rhode Island team, and there's some great Rhode Island players that have come out over the years. One of them was Christina Battistini, who is now the head coach at St. Andrews Prep, which is in a couple towns over from here. She played at Stanford. But so when I think of players like her and just other great players that have come from Rhode Island, I definitely think like tough, like there's like that chip on your shoulder sort of thing coming from a very small state.
Mhm.
And, people thinking that, that it's, oh, well, it's Rhode Island. Like, yeah, oh, you were player of the year or whatever. Well, it's Rhode Island. And there's, Janae Crooms over at Providence. She was a great player out of Rhode Island recently, who transferred back to Providence and has made a big impact on their program. So yeah, there's some really good ones. But I think that Rhode Island players have a chip in a good way.
Yep. Awesome. So I don't want to mispronounce their names. So I need to ask you a question.
Cap.
Who are Arthur Anderson and Ed to you? How pivotal were they to you in the early years of your career? And, as a coach, as a player, and looking back at things, what did you learn from them as coaches that have kept you going down the line? So I guess let's start with who they are.
Yeah,
You
so
know these
I'll
people, right?
explain that. Arthur, when you said Arthur, I was like, who is this? But to me, he was Mr. Anderson. He was a math teacher at my high school. He was also the basketball coach at Bishop Fan for my first few years. And other adults called him Artie, Artie Anderson. So what I learned from him, as a coach, like I thought was really good at making players feel comfortable and feel like safe. Like you definitely felt like you could make mistakes with Mr. Anderson, as I used to call him. So he really just had a great way of, he was so consistent with his temperament, and he was even keeled, and you just felt really comfortable that you could mess up, and that he wouldn't blow up on you, or that things were going to be fine. And he was a really good teacher. And then with Ed Gagnon, so he became my coach going into my senior year. And I remember feeling, before I knew it was going to be him, just feeling super disappointed that Mr. Anderson was stepping down. His kids were getting a little older, and I totally get that choice. But I remember kind of thinking like, in that very like all about me sort of way, like, but this is my senior year, this is a big deal. And but then when we got Mr. Gagnon, it was so cool. And for me, exactly what I needed at that point in my career, because like I'll never forget, like, I asked him to open the gym so we could get shots up, and we started shooting around, and I remember him being like, Mo, if you don't put on some muscles, you're going to get your butt kicked in college. And he had that sort of I'm going to give it to you straight up. He had always coached men's basketball. He had coached college men's basketball, and he was great for me at that point in time as I prepared to go play Division I basketball. Like, he really challenged me. He didn't let me get away with things because I was the best player on the team. If anything, he expected more. And so I'm super grateful that he was my coach that year as I went into college.
Awesome, awesome. For student athletes who aspire to play on a collegiate level, if you can give them one piece of advice, what would it be?
Well, I loved your last podcast. I've told a few people about this
Me?
with, well, your guest, the head coach at Drake,
Oh,
Coach
what's
Pullman.
yeah.
Yeah, she mentioned on your pod that she loves players that aren't high maintenance, or might have even said, like, we can't have players that are high maintenance. And I think I wouldn't want to put words in her mouth, and she used a great example about a water bottle, but I think that all coaches love players that come in and just like work really hard and kind of just show up every day and do what they need to be doing. They're not high maintenance. They just get after it. And because I think that we can always work with that. And that's such an amazing starting point. Regardless of what your talent level is, if you are working super hard every day, I just know we can build with you. And so I think for like players going into college, and I say this all the time to players in our program, they're always going from being the best player on their high school team to being one of a group of, we were all the best players on our high school team, or one of the best players on our high school team. So they find themselves in this territory where suddenly they're questioning, like, am I as good? Am I good enough to play? Like, of course you are. You are there. You are there for a reason. So let's take the emphasis off of, I have to score. I have to show my coaches I can score so that I play, because they all can score. They all have scored. We want to know, like, that you're adding value in other ways. And so I think when players just work super hard and they're like willing to just do those little things, that they stand out more than when players try to prove they can score. They usually end up not making great decisions or not making great plays. So I think if you just take the focus off of that and just worry about being great at all the other things, like if your coach emphasizes, we're always clapping when we're in the back of the line until it's our rep, like, be the person that does that. Like, those things really stand out.
Yeah, yeah. Agree, totally agree. If you'd use one word to describe your coaching style, what would it be?
One word.
One word, and why?
This is a tough question that you set us all up for, to not give you a great answer. I
Love it.
should
I
have
love it.
brainstormed on this one. One word to describe my coaching style. If there's a hyphen, will it count as one word?
I'll let you get it off, Coach. I'll let you stop.
Awesome.
I'll
I
let you
guess I
stop.
would say like process oriented. I think that for me, I'm so all about who we are every day and what we're doing every day. And I know that eventually, like, wins follow that. And so I try to continually bring it back to that, and bring it back to, like, I don't want us to be high or low after a game. I want us to be
Trust the
critical of
process.
how we're practicing for that whole week. And so yeah, I guess that would be my one hyphenated word.
You got it, Coach. You got it. So you mentioned before you played collegiate ball. You were at Bucknell, 3-year starter there. If I remember correctly, first league championship for Bucknell ever correctly. What about that time helped groom you for the next step in your career as a college coach? And looking back at it with a different lens, as a player and then transitioning to coach, what was the most valuable thing that you got as a player that helped you as a coach down the line?
Yeah. Well, there's so much. And of course, I got to spend 4 years learning a ton from all the coaches that were on my staff, that coached me. I think that just like I always had an appreciation for how hard it is to win and to do it consistently, you know. And we won the championship my senior year, which was so special. We were in the championship my sophomore year, and I remember that, you know, it was we stayed on the court. We watched the other team, you know, kind of celebrate, and we wanted to see that. And I remember we were all like, "That's going to be us next year." And you just kind of like, as a younger player, I guess, kind of think of it as like, well, we were here, we didn't win it, but like the next step is next year winning it. And that didn't happen, you know. It's like one game can change that, right? Like one kind of dry night in a playoff game or whatever. And so I think that, you know, junior year not getting that, it at the same time as it made you super hungry for like, all right, we've got 1 year left to get back there, also made you understand like how fragile that is, to get to that level, and how special it is to be there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know, you then went on to coach at Northern Arizona, if I remember correctly,
Yep.
while getting your master's. So, you know, the Big Sky. Tell me about your time, your first stint
Oh
there,
my gosh.
and
Yeah.
what you learned from that in your first stint. So, tell me about that time.
Yeah. So you're mentioning my first stint, which, you know, means that I went back for a second stint, and I sure did. I loved it out there. And one thing I thought when I was, so going back to being a high school coach, and I wanted to make this a full-time thing, advice I got from, you know, some other mentors was, you've better be willing to move. You know, if you're just wanting to be a college coach in a certain area, you're really going to, um, limit yourself. And so I applied for everything, Christian. Like I was applying for, graduate assistant jobs, third assistant jobs, like anywhere at any level. And I actually started at Northern Arizona as a compliance graduate assistant. I wasn't even with the team. But my master plan was, I just need to get working in an athletic department, and then I'll make friends with the basketball staff, and hopefully they'll let me like come to practice and hang out, and you know, and that's exactly how it went down. It was perfect. And Lori Kelly, she's, now a Division III coach in Minnesota. She's a great coach, and she was the head coach at Northern Arizona at the time, and she was awesome. You know, she was super gracious, let me come to practices, listen in on their coaching chats, and get experience. And at the end of the year, when her graduate assistant left, she was like, "Do you want it?" I mean, it was perfect. And of course I wanted it. So, yeah, so it was a great experience, and very different from my playing experience as a player at Bucknell. You know, all of our conference games were a bus trip. If we were flying for a game, it was, you know, to go play in a tournament somewhere, which we got to do a few times. It was really fun. Or, you know, flying to the NCAA tournament, that was amazing too, of course. But at Northern Arizona, just about every away game was a flight. You know, certainly all of our conference games were a flight. And, you know, unless we were playing Arizona State, Arizona, or New Mexico, most of our non-conference away games were also a flight. So that was a different lifestyle. You know, we'd play Thursday, Saturdays at the time. So we'd leave on a Wednesday, and we wouldn't be back until Sunday. So, you know, it's like a 5-day swing where you go play a couple of conference games on the road. And that said, beautiful part of the country. You mentioned, you know, it's the Big Sky Conference, and you're playing, you know, out in that area, Big Sky, like Montana. Quick plug for the show Yellowstone. You know, like when I watch that, I think about my times, you know, being in Missoula, you know, being in Billings. And so anyways, it's neat to have those reference points. But yeah, it was a really great experience and a unique experience.
Mhm. You went on to go back home in a sense in regards to going to Bucknell
Yeah,
there from 2005 to 2008, correct? Um,
right.
so you're familiar, you know, in regards to the style of play, in a sense, because you played recently there and the players there, but this is a new part of your journey. So just tell me a bit about that. And there may have even been kids on the team that you used to play with, or whatever the case may be, or kids that you knew from the area, whatever the case may be. So Big Sky, Patriot, different program, different style of player. Tell me about that time.
Well, I think like you just mentioned it with like a different style of player, and not necessarily because of the conference, but just like working for different head coaches and understanding what's important to their style. And so learning about, who my head coach at the time is, who are they good at coaching? What type of player are they great at coaching? And now I think of it in my role as a head coach, and my recruiting coordinator, Tyler, is really good at that. Like we might both really like a player, from a physical standpoint, how they perform on the court. And that player might be like really challenging to get in touch with, or tends to, we'll set up a time for a recruiting call and something kind of always comes up or whatnot. And like, we'll have a conversation of like, is this going to be my type of player? Like, I'm I do better with players that are, responsive, that are good with commitments, like that sort of thing. And but understanding from an X and O perspective, what do we want from our bigs? Like what is, what's something they have to have? What's a non-negotiable when we're recruiting this position? So it was an adjustment, like uh learning those things when you work for different bosses. But when I went back to Bucknell to work for the coach that I had played for, I felt like I had a great idea of, what type of player she liked. And so that was great. But I was going from being a graduate assistant to a full-time assistant, which, was an elevated role. And I was going to be getting more practice with scouting reports and different things. So I was excited for that opportunity to grow.
Mhm. So you head back to Northern Arizona, as we mentioned before. Everything happens for a reason. And I think that you went back there with the intention of doing something. Um, you know, Tell me about that time. What drew you back there? And I'm sure during your time at Bucknell, you learned a lot. So how did you take what you learned there and take that back to Northern Arizona that made you a better coach?
Yeah. So, well, it was an opportunity to move up in a position, and I think that I'll say this: I don't think the salary was very different, and so I think it for me it was just at that moment I had been at Bucknell for 3 years, and I had so much more that I could have learned while at Bucknell, of course, but at Northern Arizona it was the opportunity to move up in my role as a top assistant there and be in charge of recruiting, which is not something I was doing at Bucknell. And as I was thinking about becoming a head coach one day, I knew it was going to be critical that I had experience in playing those different roles. And recruiting is really your lifeline to any good program. And so just knowing I wanted to experience that sort of grind that all recruiting coordinators, go through and really understand. So I think once I was at Northern Arizona and playing that role, I realized quickly, like, geez, I had a lot to learn about recruiting, and I'm really glad I'm here doing that. It's a lot more than just going out in July and like, pointing to the good players and writing them down. So I gained great appreciation for that role. I think like my boss, Kathy Federaca is her name. She was the head coach at Bucknell for a long time. And I think she always just demanded a really high level from people, whether it was like us as players or as assistant coaches. And I really love that about her and respected that about her, because like she understood that what it took to be successful, and she was unapologetic about that. In a positive way. She demanded greatness from our staff, wouldn't let us slide on things, and that was really great. So I feel like I had a great work ethic as a player, but then like she reinforced that all over with me again as a coach.
Mhm. So you move on to Merrimack, your first head coaching job. Lots of questions, lots of questions. Okay, so you jump to your first gig, Division II. Obviously, I'm sure that you're a very methodical person, a planned person. When you're making a step for your first head coaching job, you want it to make sense, because that's not going to be your last stop. You want to make it, you know, a point for you to jump somewhere else over the course of time, potentially. So what made that school the right school for you?
So there was definitely a level of comfort with it being, in here in New England, the Northeast 10 Conference, as it was called. By the way, when I started, there were 16 teams in the Northeast 10 Conference. So hadn't updated the name, and that's fine. But it had a great reputation. I remember a player from a high school in the town over from where I went to high school. She was an awesome player, definitely a Division I player. And I remember learning that she was going to Bentley, and I was like, what? Like she could play Division I. And it was like, yeah, but Bentley's just as good as Division I teams, and they are, and so many teams in the Northeast 10 Conference are. So um, I I feel like that league had so much history for me, just knowing how good the conference is. And when you said like being methodical and thinking about these steps, I think that that's so important, Christian. And at the same time, I'm not sure if I spent enough time thinking about that, and not that that would have changed my decision, but I think I took the mindset into that as like these head coaching jobs are really difficult to come by, and there's not very many of them out there, and I'm going to take one. I think at that point I felt like I was ready, which I don't know if anybody ever is. And after my first year, I don't know if I would have told you I was still so ready, but I think I was probably, not going to overthink that and just, take that sort of opportunity. And I learned so much. It was an amazing first head coaching experience because right away in that conference, there were 16 teams. So even harder to win a conference with that many teams in it. Um, and so many of those teams have coaches that have been there for a really long time. So like I wasn't going up against a bunch of rookies like myself. I was going up against like Hall of Fame people that are like currently in the Hall of Fame or like on their way there. And so I like to say I feel like I was just constantly competing against the best of the best from a coaching perspective. It really forced me to grow and realize how good as coaches, like from a preparation standpoint, we need to be.
Yeah. You mentioned it before, any 10 conference. I know people that have coached at that level, and that players in that conference and teams in that conference can definitely beat Division I teams.
Yeah.
They are that good.
Yeah.
Having coached with the Exodus program and things like that, I used to even always say to my kids, for any 10 program, especially when an elite ones come after you, you're legit.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
legit,
You
it's a
can feel really
legit
good about
call.
that.
Not like a play call, that's a legit call. So you're there. There's a certain level and caliber of player that it's gonna take to compete at that level. First year out recruiting, what's the type of player you're looking for? You know how you want to play, but you also
Yeah.
know there's a certain type of player that's going to compete at this level. So
Right.
what are you looking for?
Well, I think that's definitely like something that I learned in my first year was I really went hard on, well, this is the team we're going to become. This is the type of style of play we're going to have down the line. So we're going to start implementing it now, and not really probably evaluating enough if we had the personnel to support, my vision, I guess, and being a little bit more flexible in those first couple of years of like, let's get those type of players in and to support that style of play. But I would say like out recruiting, um, it was clear to me when I started calling around to recruits, like you're so excited, you're at these tournaments, you're evaluating players, and you're like, that's my type of player. And then you call that kid or you call their coach and you realize like, oh yeah, the whole NE10 already loves her. She's already got offers from Bentley, Stonehill, Assumption. You're like, so it just quickly became clear to me that those really good programs at the top of the NE10 conference, like they had their roots in the area. Like their recruiting roots were deep because they've had so much success and they've had other players from those programs who are currently in their program doing well. And I felt like we needed to do something and be something a little bit different. And so we went outside the region a little bit, which was difficult because, Merrimack is a regional school. And I think you have the best success when your team kind of matches like what your school is. But we went outside the region a little bit, and we also decide, like, every team in the NE10 could really score it. They're all so high IQ and skilled players that I thought, like, let's just like try to be one of the more athletic teams. And so we became that. We became really athletic and we were really good defensively, and that helped close the gap. Um, and that made us really competitive right away in year two.
Mhm.
We were able to make like a really big jump from where we started, but it still was like, okay, we need to get better skill players in here to get over that hump of being able to beat some of these better teams. And I think that's like a cyclical process of where, like, once you're more competitive, now some of those like better skill players are like, hey, I'd be interested in you guys too. Like, I see that you're beating that team that I was just on the phone with. Like, there's that element of like what came first, like the great recruit or getting more competitive. So they just kind of keep feeding each other.
Mhm. Mhm. The first year is always tough. You were 5-21 the first year. So
You you had to bring that number right out.
I'm sorry, coach. What do you want me to do? But
I'm kidding.
You
I
know what?
still know it. Like, I know that record still.
You know what? You've taken such large steps there. The next number I'll name will be a good one. So, but yeah, let's take a little journey. Let's say you're in your office, into your first year. You walk in, you can talk to yourself. 10 years from now, blast from the past. You say, all right, you were 5-21 last year, but this blank is going to help you get to the next level. What's the one piece of advice you give yourself after the 5-21 year, knowing what you know now?
Yeah. I mean, I say this to people all the time. Like, when we were 5-21, it wasn't like, oh, we just didn't have talent in the program. We did. Like, I was also a first year head coach, and like I I wasn't very good yet either. Like I had to improve. It wasn't just like, oh, we just need to go recruit and get better. I think that um so I think I was probably in my first few years, like not even just that first year, I think I was really, really demanding. And um like, I think that I still think I'm demanding. I think like we have really high standards. Um, I just think that like I was probably overly demanding about everything. And so I would say now to like take a breath, and that I think I constantly also felt like I identified with like our record and our performance. And I think I would tell myself to like take a breath and like rewatch your games, think more about like how we can maximize the talent on this roster, and be ready to make changes and be flexible. Um, I used to go into the locker room in my first few years, like if I was upset, I was upset. Like if I was psyched, I was psyched. And both of those, there would be times where I'd go home and watch film that night and be like, wow, I think I just gave us way too many props because we didn't actually defend as well as I thought we did. The other team just missed a lot of open shots. I'm not happy with this help side or with this ball pressure or whatever it might be. And then there were, on the flip side, games where I went in and I was really upset, and I'd watch the film afterward and be like, it wasn't that bad, like I definitely overreacted. So um I think that that's something I've gotten better at, and that like all coaches can probably benefit from, is just like taking a breath, go going to sleep, and tomorrow's another day, and it's gonna be all right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you guys made the jump to the D1 level, the NEC conference. If I remember correctly, you were an associate AD at the school at the time. So you had a little bit more of a behind the scenes perspective in regards to the logistics of the jump. Um, why did it make sense, with the school long term to make that jump?
Yeah, the president there at Merrimack College, who's still there, Chris Hopi, he was hired about like 6 months to a year before me, not even a full year. And that was part of his big plan when he started, was going Division 1 to benefit the whole college, and just for that name recognition nationally. And what that could mean for the branding of Merrimack College as a place of higher education. And so it was definitely part of his vision. He was very fired up to make that move. And I think that his mindset about it and his commitment to doing it and doing it well made everybody else excited about it too. And I clearly remember, the chatter amongst coaches being like, but like our budgets aren't even big enough right now to support, everything we want to be doing as a Division II institution. And what's the plan? And, and I just remember at a certain point, like they were able to address that. Like, we have a plan. There is a plan. We understand that budgets are going to be bigger, and like basically just be ready to coach your teams, and so yeah, we just kind of were able to like shift our focus from a little bit of the fear of the unknown of like, are we going to be ready to actually jump in with 2 feet and get this done successfully, to like, okay, this plan's been like 8 years in the making. It's going to happen. They're ready for it. We need to trust that and do our job as coaches and be ready to go.
Mhm. Next number, a good number, I promised. So 20-9, if I remember correctly. You won 20 games, your first year on the D1 level. I've seen your team play a lot the last year before you left. I love the way you guys play defense. If I remember correctly, you guys ran kind of like a 2-2-1, 2-2-3, or something like that. And
Yep.
I loved it. I loved it.
Yes.
It was very effective. You had good length, good athletes. You had the conference player of the year and the defensive player of the year your first year at the Division I level, which is
right.
Incredible jump.
Yeah.
So tell me about that first year. Why do you think you were so successful making the jump?
So I think we had a lot of confidence from understanding how high level the NE10 was. Like the year before, one of the great teams in the NE10 was St. Anselm, and they had a 6'5" player, Shannon Ryan, who had transferred from Boston College. And I think just recalling small examples like that across the entire NE10, and you could think like, okay, this team had a Power 5 transfer, this team has a Power 5 transfer, understanding that we've been playing against this level of individual on these rosters. And so just trying to lead with confidence that, yes, these are Division I programs, and we recognize that. And at the same time, we understand that we've been competing at a very high level against some great individual players too. And then, like I said to you before, from a coaching perspective, I knew I had been coaching against some of the best. And so I was prepared to just coach against the next group of great coaches, knowing that, I had been doing that. And so I think winning that game at UMass, our first game, was really the affirmation we needed. I mean, that anybody would need, that you belonged, right? And so, that was a really big moment for our program to get that win. And UMass is a really good mid-major team. And then in that next game, we played Lehigh, who was picked to win the Patriot League, and we lost to them in overtime. And after that game, their coach, Sue Troyan, she's been at Lehigh for a long time and she's done really well there, but she was the head coach when I played at Bucknell, when I coached at Bucknell. So, we know each other well, and she's a great coach and a great person. And in the handshake line after the game, she told our player, Dania Davis-Stewart, that ended up getting player of the year, defensive player of the year. She was like, you go get player of the year. And that was her after seeing Dania play twice, right? Like in the UMass game when they scouted us, and then like live when they played against us. And that was really powerful and, inspiring for, I think, just another affirmation for Dania to know that, okay, from somebody who's been here, who's been in Division I, she sees this in me. I am that level player, and like small things like that, continue to happen. I think just continue to reinforce that we were good enough.
Balance is key as a coach.
Yeah.
Sometimes you got to unplug or you're from the system. So the New York Sharks, tell me about that experience. Yes, coach, I'm ready. I'm here. I'm ready. I love it.
So, well, I was with the New York Sharks before I was a college coach, but and the New York Sharks, it's a women's professional football organization, and but that said, Christian, like there have been times since that I've really gotten the itch, and there's actually a local women's professional football team here, the Boston Renegades, and I even went to like a couple of their OTAs. Like I was like, I got to get doing this again. I'm not getting any younger. Um, it's just really challenging. You know, I have two young kids, so I have a 6 and a 3-year-old, and it's hard to really make time for everything. Um, but I got to tell you, I still have my gear. I'm sure like the helmet's probably super outdated, like from a technology standpoint, but I have gotten that itch. Haven't got back to it, obviously, but to your point about balance, I think it's so important to have things like that recharge your batteries. And sometimes as coaches, we tend to like carry that badge of honor of like, all I do is watch basketball and like think about basketball and break down film. And the truth is, like, I don't know if anybody is their best self if they don't have other things that balance them. So I'm really big on, like yesterday was an off day for us, and um, you know, we'll tell our staff not to be in the office even though it's a weekday. We'll call it self-care days. And you know, I still yesterday I was watching film. Like we have 2 games coming up this weekend. Of course, I can't take the day fully off, but I got a great lift in the morning, which I don't always have time to do. And then I had a chance to, like, I love instruments. I had a chance to play the drums and play my guitar a little bit. I'm totally amateur at both, but I love doing it and it's fun. And I like trying to learn how to read sheet music and whatever. So, like, I had time for that. I read my book a little bit. I watched film on Harvard and Dartmouth. Like, but it was just a great day to kind of recharge the batteries. And so I do always hope that like our players and our staff have those things too that they like to do. And I think my staff feels comfortable knowing that they can take that time away. And even today, we've already finished practice for the day. I'm not sure if any of my staff is still here, and I think that's great. I hope they are getting a good dinner tonight and getting a little bit of time at home.
Awesome, awesome. So you became the head coach at Brown. I know you're a person that didn't just move just to move. So why? What made Brown the place to be for you? You know, jump into the Ivy League, you know, what made it make sense? Because I know you were comfortable at Merrimack and you were successful,
Right.
you know. So why? Why Brown?
Yeah, and that's a great point because I look at somebody like Barbara Stevens, who just recently retired from Bentley and is a Hall of Fame coach. And I always would say to myself, like she won so many championships and including a national championship. Like you just know that she had her chance to take D1 jobs. Why didn't she? You know, and I would sometimes think about that. And, you know, I realized that when you maybe when you're younger, you think about like all I want to do is get to the highest level that I can coach at. And then as you get into coaching, you realize that like you want to be somewhere that you believe you can be sustainably good. And that doesn't have to mean I got to the highest possible level of coaching. You know, it's okay to stay somewhere and know that you can be great there. And that's your fit, right? So I've always started to kind of put value on that. And I was starting to really feel like at Merrimack in the NEC, you know, our new Division I conference, I was feeling like we can be really successful here. So I was feeling great about being at Merrimack at the time that Brown opened up. And I think why it made sense to me is Ivy League basketball is unbelievable in the last few years. You know, WNBA draft picks every year, such a high level of basketball. Outside of the Power Five in the Big East, we're the highest rated conference, or we were a couple of years ago when we last competed. And so knowing that there's an opportunity to coach at this high level of basketball was awesome. And still there was, you know, that reservation of, you know, can we be good at Brown? Because we're good at Merrimack. And, you know, that's comfortable. And interviewing at Brown, I felt like we can be good there. And I think I have a comfort level with coming in and taking a team that isn't necessarily known as a basketball powerhouse in the league and, changing that narrative, at Merrimack. So I think that I felt like I had experience in starting with a program that we were looking to bring them up. And so I believe in the ability to do that here at Brown.
Mhm. So unfortunately, the first year the pandemic hit.
Yeah,
So you guys didn't get to participate in any games.
right.
What was the focus on for you? Because obviously you have that time off. Still trying to make connections with the kids, keep the kids sharp that are coming back, all that type of stuff. So, what were some things that you implemented, workouts via Zoom or just, video work or, books you wanted the kids to read? What was the method to your madness during that time with your team?
Yeah. Um, I'm not sure if I ever like quite figured out the right recipe for managing the pandemic with our team. So I'm so happy to be on the court and doing things in a routine that's more familiar, as I'm sure all coaches, hated that time. But for us, that time lasted through all of last year, as you mentioned. And so it was a really challenging time because being a new coach, I knew how important it was to like have these touch points and communication with the team because they don't know me yet and I don't know them and they don't know what's important to me and what our values and standards are as a program and I don't know what makes them tick and I don't know their personal goals of where they want to become, how they want to become as a basketball player. So I was like, okay, this communication is going to be really critical. And at the same time, I was battling like the energy piece of, okay, we have players that are still in class full time. We have half our team isn't even on campus. They're remote studying and they're also doing an internship. And so, okay, the time that we can meet as a team is 7 p.m. on Thursdays. And sometimes that was tough. Like I could feel that people were fatigued from being on Zoom for their classes, from having worked an internship all day, both. And it was late and we were all in different time zones. So there were just so many challenges with that. And also like we're taking over a team here at Brown that, was last place in the Ivy League the year before, right? So it's like we have to be on the phone recruiting. We got to build these connections with recruits and, the Ivy recruiting starts really far in advance. And so it was just, a push and pull of where to be spending that time and without forcing it, like I thought, okay, well, we can't really compete this year. And some people thought we were just here practicing all of last year. Like we weren't playing games, but we were all here just getting better on the court every day. And that's not the case. We had 6 players in our program right now. We're here last year. So we weren't just here and playing 5-on-5 and getting better. We had to social distance and wear masks. So we really could just kind of like shoot and do some, 3-on-0 type of stuff and work on different concepts, but we certainly weren't installing things. So it was just challenging because I thought, oh, well, you know what we'll do? We'll just like set our foundation. We'll get all of our standards in. And then I realized some of that is hard to do without being in a routine every day, without being on the practice court in terms of standards you might have for like how loud we are on defense. Well, we didn't play any defense last year because, like I said, we didn't have that many players and we couldn't be more than 6 feet. I don't know anybody who plays defense, more than 6 feet away from the ball. So, yeah, like it became, I thought I went into it thinking one thing, like, well, here's how we're going to spend all of our time and we're going to build this foundation, to quickly realizing that this September, when we actually had people here and we got started in person, that's kind of when we were able to really start with some of those necessary building block type of things.
Awesome. Couple more questions, Coach. Only a couple more.
Hey, I'm having a fun time, Christian. Happy to stay on with you.
Awesome. Tell me one drill or a slogan that you guys use in practice every day. What's your thing? What's your slogan, or what's your favorite drill? Like, we starting to practice, so this is what we do every day. We're doing this drill. Let's go. Let's get to it. Everybody has a drill they love. So, or slogan. So what is it, Coach?
Too funny. I don't know if there's actually a drill we do every day. I really maybe I don't need to be as concerned about this as I am, but I tend to think that I don't want things to get too stale. And at the same time, like, to become good at things, you have to do it constantly. You have to do it repeatedly. So there's that balance there. We do a drill Wisconsin that's like so vanilla, but it's like, it's definitely our drill. We don't do it every day, but we do it a lot. And it's literally just like me and you're shooting, I'm rebounding. You are shooting for 5 minutes straight. I'm rebounding. There's just one ball. Like, it's just the two of us with one ball. You're shooting all threes, and it's not like a conditioning drill. You literally just can't shoot in the same exact spot twice. So you can shoot, take a step, shoot, step back. It's just, you don't get to just be in a total rhythm where you're just in one spot, firing up threes, but you're also pretty comfortable. You're not running around by any means. And it's just like 5 minutes of threes, and the goal is to get over 50. But so, like I said, it's like, it sounds really vanilla, right? But for us, it's this great drill of, like, you could either get like 60 attempts up or 80, depending on how hard I work for you. So for us, it's like a culture drill of like, this is how hard I'm willing to work for my teammate. And then it's also a rebounding drill, because this is a whole nother podcast, but I'm not a huge, like, physical rebounding drill person. I don't think that those always translate to in game. And so, to me, I'm like, we just have to teach ourselves to like go get the ball all the time. Like, if we want to be better at rebounding, I don't think if we do 2-on-2 rebounding that transfers over all the time. It's more like a wrestling match. And then in the game, it's not like that. Like, it's first one to the ball. So anyways, like I said, side note, but with this Wisconsin drill, I feel like that's like a way for when you shoot, like, I have to track the ball. I have to move to the other side of the rim where statistically that rebound's going to fall. And we will really challenge our players to like not let balls hit. Like, hey, Christian needs to get as many shots as he can get. Do not let that ball hit. Like, work your butt off to go get that ball and zip it back out to him. And then the last part being like a great way to work on passing. Our players, if you interview them, they'd be like, what does coach say while you're doing Wisconsin? They'd be like, coach is telling us, go get the ball, high point that rebound. And the other thing I say is zip it, because I think like when we're just you and me shooting, like, I might throw you a couple softballs, but like, we don't let them do that in a shooting drill. So it's like a culture drill for us too, of like, we're going to throw hard passes, even in a shooting drill.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Non-negotiables.
Ooh, love it.
What's your non-negotiable? What is at least one or two? What things you like? That's a no-no. We're not taking that, What is your non-negotiables?
Yeah. So, well, I love non-negotiables from a program perspective in terms of helping to inform how we are going to play. And so typically we'll go on a team retreat. That's been hard to do with COVID, but we'll go on a team retreat and we'll bond and we'll have a great time, and then we'll settle in and start talking about who we're going to be that year and what our identity is going to be. And so for us, like, defensively, we've got some non-negotiables, and it's great that we can evaluate those to see if we're playing well, as opposed to like how many points the other team scored, or, whatever it might be from a statistical standpoint. We can look at film and just be like, let's just start with our non-negotiables, let's not worry about if the shot went in or not. Like, are our hands up? As you mentioned, we're a zone team. Like, do we have active hands? Are we up and out? And then fly around. Like, that's a phrase that you'll hear us say all the time on defense. Like, the way that we hustle around as the ball's in the air, we have to be moving. But our second so high hands is our first one. Second one is loud. And that to me, like, hey, how loud are we? Usually is like how hard we're playing, and then the third one is great contest on every shot. So for us, that's something where we're like, well, look, like, you kind of did that whole lean, she made the shot, and then you kind of looked like my hand was up, and we've defined that differently in our program. That's not going to be good enough. So I love non-negotiables from the standpoint of, we can just evaluate those to know if we're doing a good job.
Mm-hmm. If you could give a young coach one piece of advice. So you're with me. It's my first Division I practice. I'm excited. I'm stoked. One piece of advice. What would it be?
Okay. I had a hard time with the one word, and I'm having a hard time with one piece of advice. So I'm going to just, go with two here, and you can edit this later if you only want one. My my two pieces of advice that I think have been super helpful. Um, one is like, go watch other people practice, go to clinics, listen to podcasts, watch videos, reach out to coaches, like do your own homework and say, oh, this program is, they shoot the most threes in the country. I wonder how they get all those up. Just reach out to those coaches. I bet you somebody will talk to you. So I think like one is like use all the available resources to really expand your understanding of basketball because um, when people are hiring assistants, that comes through if somebody you can tell has spent a lot of time learning the game and understands a lot of different things like different ball screen coverages or different styles like of play. Oh, well, yeah, I really watch a lot of the European style and like, oh, you have like interesting. I've been looking at that too. And so I think like having a diverse understanding of the game can be really resourceful for coaches as they look to make moves. And then my second piece of advice is like you're the best at being yourself. And I still remind myself of that to this day. That, you don't have to be the loudest assistant coach. You don't have to be the most demanding assistant coach. That like who you are is why you are going to be good. So just, be great at being you, be yourself, because that usually shines through.
Awesome, awesome. So what can we expect from Brown? We're not talking about the wins and the losses. When we walk in the gym and we see Brown basketball, what are we going to see?
Yeah, well, I love that you said that. Like, I'm not talking about the wins or the losses because, like, I'm also not talking about the wins or the losses. As I told you earlier in this podcast, I'm really process oriented. And so for me, I say this to our team all the time. If we play as hard as we can play, usually good things are happening. And if it doesn't end up being the result we want, I know that we got a lot better in that game or we did good things in that game. And so when you walk in the gym and watch us play, I think the first thing you're going to say is like, that's a team that plays really hard. They don't give up and that they play really hard. I think if you come back and you keep watching us, you're going to say like, that's a team that I see growing. I'm seeing them start to gel. I'm seeing them start to have a better comfort level with both each other, but also like the systems they're running because our defense is new, our offense is new, everything is new to these guys, right? Their coaching staff is new. It's just like everything is new. So I think that the more you watch us, you're going to continue to see a team that's improving, and that's really getting better with what we do.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Anything I missed you want to share?
I love that question.
I always, I ask that question. The real question I want to ask that I'm like, I'm not going to ask that question, but I really want to ask them if there's something, tell me something new and different about you that you've never said to anyone. It could be basketball related, non-basketball related, but that could be kind of like, a sensitive thing. So I just like to ask, is there something you want? Because some people, oh my God, he wants to know just anything that I missed. Because, there may be something that, you want to share something on your chest. I wish Chris would have asked me this question.
Hilarious. I don't know if I have like I really want to share this, but you didn't ask it, but I'll try to play along with your like, what's something that like people might not know about you or that like is new that you haven't shared. And I would say like so far, we haven't danced a lot yet with this program. And I feel like it used to be a thing like, at Merrimack, the players were sure to teach us coaches like, well, this is like the new dance that's like being done right now. People are learning it. And like, hey, I've got limitations with my dance ability, but we would have fun with that. And then like you would definitely see that in like the next win, like in the locker room celebration and stuff. So I think that's something that is like, I like learning a good dance. I'm down to try. Don't get embarrassed too easily. So always down to have some fun like that with the team. Yep.
I don't know why I thought of when you said dance. I don't know if you're a Seinfeld fan, but there is this dance that Elaine does in one of the episodes.
My God.
And I'm like, is Coach talking about the Elaine dance, or she's talking about? You said TikTok. I said, oh, thank God. we're not going down that road. But awesome.
Yeah, there was a dance that was like, I don't know. I want to say it was. I can't remember the name of the song, but there were definitely like different parts. And I remember like one of my assistants there were just 3 of us on set, but she was the best dancer, right? So we were like, you've got that part, but like, what's a part I can do? And then like, what's a part Tyler can do? And like the team cracked up, laughing over it. So, but like, we're always down to have fun with that and learn some of their, like, they all recognized it from like, I don't have TikTok, but the team recognized it. So anyways, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Coach, thank you for your time. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you reaching out, Christian. Great to be on, and thank you again.
All right. All right, Coach. Bye.